This event is being recorded, so if you missed something or if you know somebody who wanted to attend, we will hopefully post it on the website as soon as tomorrow. And in a minute, I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Carpenter, who will get things started. But if anybody needs a new Monomoy sticker, just grab me at the end of the event, and I have some I can give you as a little prize for attending tonight.
Thanks, Joyce. So I'm Scott Carpenter, the superintendent in Monomoy. I would love to give us just a couple minutes, maybe to reorganize and suggest that maybe we come down towards the front and we can have more of an intimate conversation. Just might be go a little better all around, and then we could even ditch the microphone.
There won't be any pop quizzes.
It's okay.
We're all bad kids. We're sitting in the back.
You're still allowed to sneak out early if you need. Michael here is the friendliest Scottish man that you'll ever meet. Yeah. So, what I'd like to do, I think since it's such a small group, I think we have time to do this. There are a lot of us here, a few of you, and I think we have time to at least let you know who we are and just let you share who you are and what your connection is to us.
So I'm Mike McMillan. I'm the school business manager. Nice to meet you.
Mark Smith, I'm the Director of Curriculum Instruction and Assessment for the district.
Melissa McGuire, Director of Student Services for the district.
Leah Tambolio, I'm Scout's admin, and I'm the recording secretary for the school committee.
Bill Massey from Chatham Police Department. I'm the SRO for the middle school and Chatham Elementary School.
Hi everybody, Christine Catone, the new principal at Harwich Elementary. Nice to see you. Allison Joy, the new assistant principal at Harwich Elementary.
Kelly Heffernan, parent of a 10th grader, Jack Heffernan, at the high school.
I'm Jim Birchfield. I'm the Director of Instructional Technology for the district.
Hi, Rick Travis, Director of Facilities.
Hi, I'm Leanne Smith. I work for Harwich Fire. I do the public education in the Harwich schools, and I'm a member of the crisis team.
I'm Aaron Goshgarian. I'm a sergeant with the Harwich Police. I'm a member of the crisis team and the supervisor of the school resource officers in town.
Jen Police, very proud principal of Monomoy Regional High School.
Tom Clark.
Nice to see you.
Harwich Police, school resource officer at the high school and Harwich Elementary.
And parent.
And yes, and a proud parent.
Andy Goddard, Chatham Police. I'm a lieutenant. Mike Anderson, Chatham Police Chief. I have one at the high school and one in the middle school.
Charles Gruska, grandparent and interested citizen.
Jill Malinowski. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, please, you're next.
Jill Malinowski, and I'm the guidance counselor at Harwich Elementary School, and I'm also on the crisis team.
Josh Piper, kid in middle school and work at Youth Associates.
Well, no, I'm actually, we have a kindergartner, so I can
I'm Robin Dakota, I have a daughter in second grade.
I'm Dan Fitzgerald. I have a son in the 8th grade here in high school.
Brady Wheeler, I have a son, Mason Wheeler, in middle school, 5th grade this year. And Isla is in the elementary school in 2nd grade.
I'm Helen Grace Newton. I have a 3rd grader at the middle school and 2 at the elementary school. Harwich Elementary.
I'm Heather DeVoe. I have Grace Jacob and Lucas Hall in Chatham Elementary. It's my birthday year.
Meredith Rapchetti, 2 daughters here at Monomoy High, freshman and senior.
I'm just hanging on. That's all for you.
And last but not least.
Mandy Seekman. I have a daughter here at the high school and a daughter at the middle school.
Thanks, man. So just to put this in context, I think the end of last school year, I think scared a lot of us, including, me as an administrator. I think, any of the educators in the schools. I know public safety, when you see, what had happened in Uvalde, and I was worried, and I know a number of administrators were worried that, we've been in this transitional time where you had COVID, and kids weren't in school, and we were back in, but it was funky, and I wanted to make sure that we really paused early on at the beginning of this school year and made sure that it was explicitly clear to staff and students across all buildings, across all grade levels, what to do if something really bad were to happen. And so we're just making sure this year that we're sort of pausing, and the school. I went to the school committee and asked them to have this Friday be an early release day. We're going to start training staff on a new tool that we'll talk about. But again, just to try to make sure that everybody's back up to where we had been. And I know I really appreciate in the past years, and this has been going on, for a long time now, where police and fire come in at the elementary level, and they are so great at walking kids through in each classroom what to do. And as the kids get older, that's still in the back of their head. But again, they get older, they move from elementary to middle school to high school, and we want to just make sure that everybody has that refresher and that we're back up to speed on all procedures. So we're going to start this week with common drills that's happening across all of the buildings. And again, it's just making sure that students and staff are refreshed on what to do. And we do this. You do those fire drills, but we also just really want to start emphasizing to students this kind of concept of flexible thinking when it comes to emergencies. And it's one of those skill sets that will benefit kids throughout their lives. That if a crisis happens, just think about your options. So we will, we'll be meeting as the week goes on, and we will continue to meet as many of the people had mentioned that they're part of a crisis team. So our team will keep meeting as the year goes on and continue to refine and improve our procedures. So just to give you a little feel for what we do, we have a crisis team that is a lot of the administrators that are in this room, public safety, a number of other key school personnel are part of that group. And we have been meeting for the last several years and come together when incidents happen here in our school and kind of review and do a sort of after action debrief and talk about how we could be better next time. But we also look at an event like Uvalde and other events that have sadly happened elsewhere and try to have that same sort of conversation, go through the scenario and talk about, what are we doing here to make sure that something similar is far less likely to happen. And that has been going on and will continue to go on. So we have a crisis plan, have had a crisis plan, and it's a living document that every time something comes up, we look at it and say, okay, what can we do? What can we do better? So we have been doing some changes to that plan. One of the things that I think has most fundamentally changed about our plan, and I shared this with our staff at the beginning of the school year, is we learned last year that the word lockdown may be providing sort of a wrong signal to people because if there was a violent action that was happening in the building, the word that was supposed to come over the announcement to tell you to start reacting was lockdown, lockdown, lockdown. But lockdown, I think for most, kind of has this conceptual, I'm locking my door and protecting myself. But what we've been telling staff that's sort of best practice is if there's something really bad happening, you're supposed to look, is it safe, and get out of that building. But the word we were using to initiate that was clearly counterproductive. So one of the things that we have done this year is just change our wording, which now means we need to change the training of our staff and also prepare our students that if you hear something over the announcements, and this is what you're hearing, this is how we want you to be thinking. This is the mindset that we want you to be adopting. And we'll get into that briefly. So we've updated our manuals. We're also in the process of working out the logistics on an app called Crisis Go. So you don't need to go and download it onto your phones yet, but in the upcoming weeks, we'll get there with parents and we'll give you, we'll send out an email with a link and say, download this app, here's how you use it, and we'll probably have another one of these sessions just about the app. But before we send parents that, on Friday, we'll be working with our staff on that app. In terms of just building logistics, I think one of the most crucial things that, and this is sort of a lesson, this added lesson to Uvalde, is like you want to make sure those exterior doors are locked. And I'll give poor Rick, our facilities director, credit to that ever since that event last year, I've been periodically saying, okay, Rick, I'd like you to go around to every building, in the district, and just keep reporting out, has somebody left a rock in the door that they thought might make it easier for them to go get something out of their car, but, so we have always had our doors, ever since I've been here for the last, ever since we've been Monomoy, the exterior doors are locked. There's buzzer systems to get in. We have changed, even at the middle school. The middle school used to have like a keypad where you could punch in the code on the door, and and I think a number of our middle schoolers, would be like punching in the code that they saw their teacher punching on the door. So they're still keypads. They don't work. Everybody has a swipe card to get in, get in the building. So you can't get in the building without a key, without a swipe, without buzzing in, and you have to talk to somebody to get into all of our schools. And we have cameras in each of the buildings, and we've upgraded a number of those camera systems in the buildings. And I'm really grateful. We've got two great SROs, both Sergeant Massey and Tom Clark in the back there, who are in both the elementary schools and the middle and high schools. So these, they'll be in each building at different times, of the day, but they're there. And I'm also grateful to both of the police departments in each town, because anytime there has been the slightest little thing that's scary out there in the media, there is often an additional officer that will either be out front or in the building, or, last year, I think just shortly after Uvalde, I walked into Chatham Elementary School, and during gym class, there was an officer there, playing indoor soccer, as part of, with the class. So, so I appreciate just how much public safety does, does participate and work with us and, our students and our schools. In terms of fires, the fire departments, we by state mandate have to have a fire drill that happens early on in the first days of school. Those have already happened in each of our buildings. The systems are checked, checked regularly, and we drill for both that, and we also drill for for events that are, those scary, more violent things. So the crisis team, I think I mentioned, it's comprised of, of administrators, nurses, public safety, counselors, and police and fire. And we, we regularly meet, and anytime something pops up in either the news that's really concerning, that's happened nationally, or something's happened here in our district, we pause, take some time, look at how we could be better here within our schools, but also try to make sure that we're being consistent in our procedures, building to building. Our 2 school resource officers, I've talked about those, so we could just kind of skip forward, but I think an appreciation I have of both Sergeant Massey and Officer Clark is that they're more than just school resource officers. I mean, they're parents in the system, they're really involved with our students, and I think our students over time really see them as a safe person to go to if there's a problem. And I think that's the power of a school resource officer in that type of program, is there's yet another trusting adult who kids can go to if they're worried about something. So we'll talk about just the three scenarios here. So first deals with building evacuations, and we'll call it fire events. So I will turn things over to Captain Smith to talk about all things fire related.
So I don't know, I know that the next slide kind of goes on to this, but obviously whether you stay in, you're in a classroom or in a hotel room, everywhere has to have an evacuation plan. So we practice that regularly, 4 times a year. It's required by state law. Unfortunately, the hostile event drills are not required. One of those drills can also be used as a hostile event drill, so it's just an evacuation. So they do have their normal routines that they follow. I would say fire drills are pretty standard. The alarm goes off, they almost always go the same way. But one of the things that we are trying to get them to understand, and I would say more so since we've been doing the hostile event drills, is just to really be flexible. Just if that's the way you always go, you might not be able to go that way that time. That might be where the fire is, that might be where the hazard is, and I would say the staff here is definitely embraced being able to make their own decisions to get the students to where they safely need to be. And the other piece that we've kind of tried to tie in is, where would we go if they can't go back in the school? So if there is inclement weather, if there's a gas leak in the school, if there's something else where we can't bring them inside, like what are some hardened buildings where we could either walk them to or transport them to get them somewhere else till parents could come pick them up. Because it does take a little while to mobilize the buses and the resources and get in touch with you all to come get your kids. So I would say that's the biggest thing from us is just, where we do watch when they do the fire drills to see if certain areas bottleneck. So if they jam up like a stairwell, or we have people in hallways to make sure if we can kind of clear those areas out in case there was an emergency. We might need to shift some classes to a different entrance. I think that's pretty much it on that part.
And I would say it takes our buildings, a minute and a half tops to go have everybody out, be completely empty, and
have attendance.
And within the next few seconds, it seems, whether it be in Harwich or Chatham, you're already having public safety you're hearing them, coming down the road and about to roll up, So the response time is quick, but the kids and staff were able to get out quite quickly, and just the proximity of where public safety is to all of our schools. It's a quick turnaround time for public safety to show up on scene. The next one deals with run, hide, fight. So I'll let Sergeant Massey kind of talk about this. This is what we have shifted to as a district several years ago, instead of just this typical lockdown as you may have heard of it in the past.
Thank you. For those of you that weren't here for the introductions, Bill Massey from Chatham Police. I'm the SRO of the middle school and also at Chatham Elementary School. I moved here from Western Mass in 2005, and in 2006, I immediately started working with, at the time, the Chatham School District to develop a SRO program, or at least something where there was a police officer with a regular presence in our schools. I've been fortunate enough to, apparently I did something right because they keep giving me that assignment year after year, and I tell everybody that I can, who will listen, that I have the best job at the police department. I get to go to a great place where there's a great vibe every day. They're happy to see us, staff and students, so it's terrific. So my passion for school-based policing is based on that, and now I have 2 kids in the district, so it's really kind of like a second home for me. My kids might say a little bit different story. They're probably sick of seeing me by dinner time, but anyway. So Scott mentioned Run, Hide, Fight, how we transitioned to that from the traditional lockdown model. That wasn't by mistake, and it was based on best practices that we learned after several incidents. And that is, if your situation or your environment becomes unsafe, your best bet is to run away from it. Now, I grew up in Western Mass. I rode my bike to and from school, or I walked since I was in 2nd or 3rd grade. And my parents always told me, if you're riding or walking to school, and somebody in a white van pulls up next to you and wants to give you candy or tells you to get in their van, you run away. That has stayed with me. That is an unsafe environment, so I learned to run away, and I know to run away. This is the same concept. If our school becomes an unsafe environment for any reason, whether it's a violent incident, terrible weather, some type of gas leak or fire incident, the best procedure is to get away from it. It doesn't matter the why, and that's really what we try to emphasize to the students, especially the younger ones. Don't get focused on why we're doing this. Focus on how, because that's what's going to make you win in the end. How do I get to a safe place? And at the younger grades, it's easy. You listen to your teacher. Teachers will have the best opportunity to get those kids to a safe place. And like Scott said, where is that place going to be? We've got some places identified, but in the end, a safe place is where we want our kids to be. And with the rollout of Crisis Go, that's really going to help us with accountability and locating kids if they do have to evacuate for some reason. If running and evacuating is not an option, then we want somebody to find a way to buy some time so that they can get to that run opportunity. And that could be going to our traditional lockdown. Locking yourself in a closet, turning the lights off, dimming the windows. We don't get into detail with the kids when we talk about this. We leave it to the teachers to, well, we don't leave it to the teachers. We work with the teachers to find best languages and best wording for age-appropriate considerations. The things we tell them at the elementary school are a lot different from what we tell them at the middle school and the high school. When we first did this, I'll tell you, I had some high school kids that said, Officer Massey, I gotta be honest with you, if something bad really happens, I'm not going in that little closet, I'm getting out of here. There's kids that were in the know about what was going on in the world around them and had probably had some discussions at home to get to that decision. So that's buying time, and there's a number of ways that can be accomplished. It's really just waiting for an opportunity to get yourself to a situation where you can then go to our first response option, which is to run and evacuate. The third one, which is one we don't like to talk about, and I really, as a parent and as a police officer, I hate the fact that we have to talk about this, but I really feel in my heart, as a parent and as a police officer, the only thing worse than doing this is not doing it. Not engaging and not arming our teachers and our kids with the right tools and the right decision-making abilities to keep our kids safe. You go out of your way to keep your kids safe at home. When you bring them to the schools, we know you want us to go out of our way to keep them safe there. And that's our #1 priority. As a parent and as a police officer, that is my pledge to you. So the third option, and this is where instinct, as a human being, your fight or flight instinct will kick in, and it's doing something that can distract someone, temporarily stun them so that you can then get out. If you've ever been sprayed in the face with a water gun, it surprises you and it messes up what's called your OODA loop. It means it messes up what you're thinking about, and it throws you off for just a few seconds. Those few seconds could be enough so that you can get to a safe place. We go into the schools and we work with the teachers, we work with our fire department partners. We talk about not the why, but the how to get out of the building. We use the weather example. We try not to solicit too much from the kids, especially at the younger levels, because we understand that one conversation at home might be different from another conversation at home. So we really focus on the how instead of the why. This isn't anything that was just decided by us. These are best practices. They're endorsed by the Massachusetts State Police, the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, and many, many school districts all across the country utilize the run, hide, fight. You may have heard of Alice. That is a brand name. We don't have Alice. We have the run, hide, fight, which is this three-pronged approach to violent incidents or situations at the school when they become unsafe. As Leanne said, we are able to use one of the fire drills during the year as a crisis drill, and we've worked with the school district and our partners in the fire department to figure out the best way to do that. I look forward to this Crisis Go app. I look forward to it supplementing and bolstering our ability to have a solid plan in place for each of our buildings, and hope we never have to use it for real. But having it is a comfort to me as a police officer and as a parent, knowing that these are things that are constantly being talked about with crisis team, public safety, and the district administrators. I'll be sticking around if there's questions after. Okay? Or I can take them now.
We'll wait. We'll have lots of time for questions. I remember, as scary as this is, I remember the first time that I went to a professional development thing that was police and school administrators in the western suburbs, and the speaker who was raising sort of an awareness that folks needed to shift their thinking from a traditional lockdown to something like what we're talking about, this concept of run, hide, fight, and saying we have two options: to train our staff and our students to be sheep, and that what we have been seeing, sadly in the news and media, is that there are unfortunately wolves in the world, and we can just sort of hide and hope the wolves are stay at bay, or we can train our staff to be sheepdogs, to be shepherds, and this notion of that there are better things that we can do, not just hide, but do things that get everyone out to safety. So that's really what the emphasis is here. And that's why we wanted to shift the wording and how we're training staff and students this year. Is lockdown puts us in this place that number 2 up here, that hide is what we want people to do, but everything says that the best thing you can do, if it's available, is to get away from that danger. So that's the conceptual shift we're shooting to put in place for this year. One of the biggest logistical challenges when anything like this happens is how do we go get everybody back with their parents? And last year, we had a bomb threat at the high school, and we evacuated the high school. And then you can imagine now we have almost 700 students, and we need to make sure that we account for all 700 students and who all 700 students have left, if they've left with a parent or left with somebody that the parent has said, or left on the bus. But that whole concept of making sure that we're going in and having that reunification happen and we're accounting for everybody. This new app that we're putting in place, Crisis Go, will definitely help us with that, because when teachers go out and they're at their evacuation zone, they can just pull up on their handheld device their student list, pop, pop, pop. here's everybody that's here. The principals on their end will be able to go and see, here's who's accounted for, who's not. And we can then use that tool to communicate with you in terms of where we need to show up to pick up your children. And as you're picking up your children, we can then start accounting for who's, so it just electronically helps everybody communicate, us communicate with you, and us also communicate with each other during, during an event. So, so if, Mr. Smith has somebody missing in his group, he can actually type a message out. It goes to us, being shared with public safety, so that it's a good communication tool in the moment. But one of the key things it's going to help us for is to have a more seamless reunification. And I get it as a parent. I was sharing with somebody that this past week, on Friday, I had my first call from the daughter who just went away from college. It's like I think I've really hurt my knee, and it's like I was like feeling helpless. It's like, okay, it's like I'm like punching in. It's like, okay, how long is it going to take me to get up to Boston, get on a flight to Georgia, and drive 90 minutes to the University of Georgia? And but it's this, so it's like you, as a parent, you just naturally, when you sense that your child's, not okay, that you want to be there. The challenge we have as a school and public safety is, you can imagine, when 700 parents want to all be there too at the same time, the road gets completely clogged up. The ability of Captain Smith to go and get the fire trucks or ambulance here becomes compromised. And if I need to go and get everybody bused from here to somewhere safer, or to support the reunification, the ability of our buses to go and get there becomes challenging. So, so it's times like a crisis where we all have to kind of work together, and we'll be communicating out through the app, and Joy does a great job through social media and email. So to just kind of guide you on where, what we need the parents to do so that we can get everybody back as soon as they possibly can, with their students. And I know we've, even in the event last year, by the time we started to have parents pick up their children, it was, as fast as that line could, of parents could go down, we got kids back to their families, within an hour. And thank God that was not a real, situation, but it was concerning nonetheless. All right, so the app, as I mentioned, you'll get an email from us in the upcoming weeks as we get everything worked through. Right now we're currently sort of live working out the bugs with the company to be able to get our staff trained on Friday. And then once we get the staff module all worked through with the company, we'll start transitioning into working with the company on a parent module and get that all working seamlessly. Then we'll put something out to families and say, okay, here's how you log on to the app. It has been used at NOSIT uses Crisis Go, and I know that Ms. Joy came to us from NOSIT, and I know we have a number of parents that are staff members that live in the NOSIT towns, and they say it's been working well for them. So we'll be putting that in place, as well as an additional layer of us to have as a communication tool during events. So this week, the little trainings that will happen with staff and students will continue, and Friday afternoon our staff will be working on using that Crisis Go app, and we'll also do some additional safety training with them in the rest of that Friday afternoon. The last thing, last slide I have for y'all is just the thing that's really important. I think the most important thing to keep in mind when it comes to keeping schools safe, and that's this, that whole concept on, see something, say something. It's, you always hear when bad events happen, it's like, well, somebody starts to say, well, they knew things were not well. And, and I think it's, if, as parents, if you hear something, if your student hears something and reports it to you, the more you can funnel information to us so that we can help, take that information and do something to protect everybody, the safer we can keep our buildings. And then we'll open it up to questions because we have somebody here that can answer any question that you have, hopefully. Naomi, did you have one?
I have a couple questions. Since you're just talking about see something, say something, is there like an initiative to really drive that home with the kids? I feel like as parents, maybe we hear stuff, as kids, someone's definitely hearing something. I just didn't know if there was anything in the works for that, like programs or talks with the kids or.
So I would say at all the different grade levels, when there's building-wide meetings, that's, that is a focus that they have. I think much more explicitly as you get to the high school, to the high school level, where I think some of those challenges, can involve, students in self-harm and everything else. So we, I think it comes back in the programming that we have and the meetings that we're having with kids and in a variety of different functions beyond just, the topics that we're kind of focused on here. And I think, again, we haven't implemented the Crisis Go app with everybody yet, but but there is actually tools within the Crisis Go app to go use that for reporting as well.
So like, just to follow up, I have the same exact question. Like, I don't have a middle school or a high school yet, but maybe going to see a guidance counselor or talking to a teacher may flag you as somebody who might be a tattler or a talker or whatever, but is there an anonymous tip box or a way to just like drop something at some point that says, hey, I'm just concerned, I've seen some things going on, can you just look into this anonymously without even having to put your name out there, without having to be worried that maybe you're looking, I just didn't know.
So actually at the middle school and the high school, where it's most appropriate, all the counselors on their email have that exchange. So students have the opportunity, they could be sitting in class on a Chromebook and they can actually send a message to the counselors. That's for anything. So if they need to speak with them, if they're not feeling safe, they're able to do that, which is a really cool feature. So kids do use that. So as you said, some kids might not feel comfortable walking down, but they have the ability to automatically send an email to one of their counselors.
Who did you say that email goes to? It goes to
The counselors. In the middle school and the high school, goes to the counselors.
Are the resource officers able to be emailed in that as well?
That is just for the counselors. It doesn't go to, but when that happens, certainly counselors are very connected with the school resource officers. They have phenomenal communication, and whenever there's a concern about any situation, they're right there. And Tommy and Billy can speak to that, but it's a really cohesive communication system.
Have the kids been kind of told they could use it?
All the kids are aware. At the middle and high, the elementary, that's
right.
Not really appropriate, but middle and high school, they're all aware they have that capability to do that.
And they would stay anonymous during the process?
That's not anonymous because they're sending an email. So for an anonymous process, that's something like for our bullying, we do have, that as an option. For the bullying reporting, there's an online form that is. So, I mean, as a crisis team, we could certainly talk about ways in which, someone might want to report something, but not necessarily, we could talk about that.
Yeah, and as I said, this new app that we're putting in place does have an anonymous reporting feature to it. And again, I think we have to look at how we I think it's billed as a bullying reporting, but we can go and look at how we work with the company to use it for what makes sense, what makes most sense for us.
Will the kids have access to this app?
Yep.
Oh, they will. It's not just your parents.
Yeah, and quite literally the way the app is set up, that that if we put out an alert, their Chromebooks, it hits everything in the system that has this, so their Chromebooks will start saying, it's like, this is the mode we are going into. Dan?
Sergeant Massey brought it up a little bit when he was talking, when they were going through the trainings, the evacuation trainings, stuff like the fire drills or whatever with the kids, and the language that they use. I have not heard, and I don't think anybody wants to use the word like active shooter because of it's a horrible term. But what kind of language do you use with the high schoolers and the middle schoolers when you're talking about stuff like that?
So, great question. Obviously, at the high school level, where they're a lot more worldly, it's more of an open discussion, but we don't use those words. We can't prevent it from coming out from our audience. So there's strategies that we use to kind of not deflect it, acknowledge it exists, and say, you know what, that is one possibility that we're talking about in the grand scheme of things here, but there are other threats that are possible as well. And again, we re-emphasize, we're not talking about the why, we're talking about the how. And if that's what you focus on, the how to get yourself safe, the why isn't going to matter. If you're running from a person or a piece of debris that's coming in from a Cape Cod storm, that we now call tornadoes because they're coming here too, it doesn't matter. Your focus is to get away and get to a safe place. So I don't want to say it's a fine line, but it's come with experience that not deflecting it again, but acknowledging, okay, I hear your concern, but there's other things that we're talking about as well. As we get to the lower grades, obviously the gap between what kids are exposed to at the higher level ages like 7th grade and 5th grade is remarkable. There are kids with belief systems at the 5th grade level that are very elementary, and then there are kids in that same building that probably ride on the bus with them that have a belief system and an experience level that's much higher than probably where it should be, thanks to social media or whatever they expose themselves to. So it's a little bit more difficult there. We never do this without teachers. Teachers know the kids in the classroom the best, and if there's kids ahead of time that they know, they say, hey, this kid over here, sometimes might have a wandering way of wanting to discuss something, that might be somebody to keep an eye on for our discussion. We're prepared for it. So we use language that's appropriate for that age level. And again, if things come out from our audience, we don't deflect it or dismiss it. We acknowledge it, and maybe the teacher and I could reach out to the family and have a one-on-one discussion with that student a little bit later to kind of not downplay, but alleviate their concerns. Because if they're thinking about it, they're thinking about it. And if they're talking about it, they're definitely talking about it with friends. So we need to make sure that they all get the same message. It's not easy, but with the help of the teachers and our other public safety partners that we work with, and the counselors, especially the relationship that we have with our counselors at the middle and high school is unbelievable. We have discussions with them about safety every single day. We have discussions about students of concern when it becomes necessary. So sometimes, I'll come in on a Monday from a weekend and say, hey, I need to talk to you about so-and-so. There was an incident with the family over the weekend. Yep, I already know about it. They emailed me. Okay? So the relationship that we have is very good and is in the best interest of student safety. Does that help you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I follow up?
Sure.
While you're standing there, and I don't want to hyper-focus on this, but it was something that when I went into the school for substitute teacher training, and that was my first exposure to run. So my immediate question was, how do I know where to go? How do you know if there's not shots being fired, but there's someone in the building that has a gun? How do you know which way to go? Because I don't want to lead a group of kids into a hallway walk into a horrible situation. So number one, is there a way to convey through whatever word, like, you know, playground is safe, you know, like, so this is kind of like a second follow-up to, are there cameras outside or at, like, when I was at Chatham Elementary the other day, I was like, there are doors everywhere here. There are so many doors. And are all these doors being monitored? Are people able to access these? Is there a camera system somehow set up that you can see someone walking in? Because even if it's locked, if someone had a gun and they could shoot it out, it doesn't matter if it's locked or not. Are there red flags that are kind of going off before people are entering the building, or saying, you know, the playground side is not safe, go towards this side, you know, or any sort of information? Because I know if I was in the building when that happened, I just want to know the best information that I can before I made the decision what to do with these 20 lives.
And we may not always have that information.
Yeah.
The first concept, the first idea in the run strategy is to do a quick peek, and you're looking for a safe place to go. So, and again, not to focus on the why, but focusing on the how. If I look out my classroom and it looks clear from here till I know that there's an exit door right there, that's the way I'm going. If I look this way, same thing. It's that speech you get every time you get on an airplane.
Yeah.
And always know that your most safe exit might not be the closest one to you.
Right.
So we also incorporate that into our staff trainings.
Right.
Because they get focused. This is the way I always go.
Yeah.
And as the year rolls on, with our fire drills especially, what we'll do is we may put a firefighter with a sign that says, "This way not safe."
Gotcha.
So it gets them to think on their feet, okay, I can't go my usual way, now I gotta go this way. So as part of the substitute teacher training, and I don't know what it includes, I always make it a point to try to connect with substitute teachers, introduce myself so they know who I am. I mean, it's no secret. But it hopefully encourages them to do the same for me, so I know who they are, and if they have any questions, they can certainly, you know, reach out to me. I say hello to everybody in the building every day if I can. It's probably the most popular thing I say every day. Hey, good morning, how are you? Because I want people to know who I am and know that I'm approachable, so that when they have those questions, they can ask. Could we do better? Always. And that's what we do with the crisis team. How can we do this better? What is the best product we can deliver in the interest of district safety? And I believe the Crisis Go is a good step in that direction.
Yeah.
Did I get all your questions?
The cameras, are there cameras
So-
or are there not cameras?
There are cameras in all the buildings, you know, so.
At Chatham Elementary, all the entrances
There-
and exits have cameras?
I don't know that each entrance at Chatham Elementary has a camera, but, you know, but if you think of the scenario that you brought up, you know, if somebody's making that noise, it's like, it's registering through, you know, through the school, and, you know, and you can imagine, you know, the events for, you know, for shifting into that sort of run, hide, fight, you know, start, you know, once there's some sort of loud noise, or, you know, once there's somebody who's come in, you know, come in through, you know, through an entrance that, you know, that they weren't supposed to, you'd start to have that whole cascade happen. So some things to kind of piggyback on what Bill was saying, and to address some of the concerns that you had. Two changes that happened this summer. Mr. McMillan has been working hard at upgrading the phone systems in each of the buildings. So the high school had a more modern phone system, but our other buildings, we'll say, were more arcane in terms of the phone systems that they had. You know, so the phone systems are now connected, you know, to the intercom system. So, you know, so you can, you know, when you pick up your phone, you have the capability of broadcasting out. So one of the things we talked about at the crisis team level is shifting one piece of what was under this original lockdown matrix that we were kind of moving away from. And I think the original thinking was, it said, you know, you'd have this you know, announcement would go out, lockdown, 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 and then it said just ignore anything else. That's what, if you hear that, this is what you're supposed to do. Well, ignoring anything else kind of gets in the way that we could be communicating and saying, it's in the library, the instance of high school, it's in the library, so if you're not in the library and you're anywhere else, you've got some information to go. So we do have the capability from the system to potentially keep communicating and even communicate from outside of the building potentially what's going on. The Crisis Go app is also huge for this because we can push information out to staff. So the training that they're having is when a fire alarm goes off, when this run, hide, fight protocol goes into place, you're taking your kids, you're taking out your app, and we can go and push information into that in real time. It's like, and teachers can push it out to each other. It's like, it's all the way upstairs. It's in the cafeteria. So we can in real time pump information out to all of the staff that are helping guide children out to safety, where the issue is and where it's safe. On the substitute teacher piece, because you're getting trained as a substitute teacher, one of the things Mr. Birchfield and I have been working on today is the logistics on, if we have a sub, what does the sub do? Because in the training it's going to be, well, you got the kids out, but how do we then have the subs out there with the class? How do those kids get accounted for? So we're working with the company right now on making that sub, not necessarily, he or she is, shepherding that class of students, but having a teacher from an adjacent classroom be able to pull up that class list too and go through and check off the kids so that everybody gets into the system. But again, that's the logistics that are happening behind the scenes as we work with the company on going live with Crisis Go. And then Melissa, do you want to just talk about the whole threat assessment piece?
Sure. At the end of last year, we did a comprehensive training. It's called CSTAG, which is a comprehensive school threat assessment program. Our school resource officers were part of that as well. It was pretty much an all-day training on really being able to pull a team together to do a threat assessment on any situation. We're talking about see something, say something, any situation that we're really concerned about, to understand if it's kind of a minor threat, a medium threat, or a large threat. I'm just using those terms, and to be able to really pull our teams together to make sure that we're really paying attention. So that was also added in, and at the end of the month, the rest of the councils and all the buildings will have training to that. And that's something that's very readily accessible, and we have pretty robust teams in each of the buildings for that.
Good question.
Just a question. Last year at the end of the year, one of the times where I think it was a lockdown at that point. Having two daughters here, one of the teachers ran the kids out, and I was like, go for it. But I remember my other daughter across the classroom from her was a substitute, and they didn't know how to lock the door. So that's just one more thing if you're talking to substitutes. They had no idea how to lock the door, and I think at that point they were locking doors to keep the kids in.
Right, well, and that was for us. For me, after that event, when because somebody mistakenly said lockdown on the announcement, and I think 2 classrooms ran out the building, and I'm like, haven't we trained that if you hear this, even if it was a mistake, everybody should have been going, well, if it was safe, because it was safe in the halls, and that's when it's like, okay, crisis team, we need to get back together, because we just had a textbook example of a word that's in our safety plan does not seem to be doing, it's getting in the way of what the right response would have been in the moment.
And just to follow up on the substitute teachers, is there some kind of certification program or training that they go through so that, in a crisis situation, you want everybody rowing in the same direction? So if you get the substitute teachers and they're not trained or certified in the way you want to manage the situation, that could be problematic.
Yeah, so there is a little, sort of mini course that we have people that sign up to be subs get a training. Our HR person gives them gives them an overview of the different things. And because this is so important, this is one of those things that they're kind of, we kind of explain to them on how to, what a crisis scenario looks like, and how you should be responding as a substitute teacher.
And the one that I went to was just run. There wasn't any real information at all. So if there was a follow-up, especially after the app comes out, for us to have access to more information, I would love that.
Yeah, the app also, the app as it is laid out, literally has a checklist of, so a sub or a teacher could just be like, I do this, then I do this, then I do this. I mean, and literally it's set up so that you can just go click, I've done it, done it, done it, done it. And you get down to like number 3, it's like you're out of the building, I'm accounting for all the students, click here, boom, 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 here's the kids that are with me, here's who's missing.
I just have a question on kind of the front door protocol. I know you talked about it, but like at the elementary school, you press the buzzer, all I have to say is I'm here to pick up my daughter, and you're in. And I am there to pick up my daughter, and most people, obviously that's what they're doing. My concern is I've seen people kind of piggyback and go in behind each other. I'm sure I've done it in the past.
We won't cite you
The
for that.
second, what's that? Yeah, years ago. The second set of doors is unlocked, is that correct? Like once you're in.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on which building, what era was built in. So the high school has a second set of doors that are locked. In fact, when I first came here, the high school plans were all already drawn up, and that front alcove didn't exist. So when I came here, that was one of the few change orders we put in. So if you go out after this meeting and you look that way, you'll actually notice that it's sort of like a funky setup. So there's so the alcove actually has a roof to it. It's like an additional room that was built after the fact, and but we felt it would be good to have that second one. I think the important thing from the entrance is, I agree, we want to remind staff, that, you should be letting people in and encouraging, people not to piggyback. But the really important thing is it's not just a buzzer, there's a camera at those buzzers. And I kid you not, for my first 3 years in this district, I'm somebody who hates suits. And on Fridays, I really don't like ties. Harwich Elementary School, I don't know what it was, but I would go over there, and if I wasn't wearing a tie, they're like, could you say who you are? And I'm like, I'm the superintendent, come on. It's like I come here all the time. but literally, if the front office, if they have this, if their spidey sense is like, oh, this person, they'll come out, they will not just buzz you in, but they will come out and meet you or talk to you first, or ask you for more information. But I just felt it was somewhat reassuring as a superintendent that they were that careful, but quite literally there were times I was like, come on, it's like, can you not see me? Like, it's like, so I need to go and make sure I wear a tie. I'm over at Harwich Elementary apparently with their
I think that's something that we as parents need to be better at too. And I know in Chatham, that's a big thing that's pushed there, is to not hold the door for people. Don't hold the door, make them buzz themselves in. And it's something that we talked in the elementary school with our kids today at Harwich. But if you see someone at a door and you might even recognize them, it could be your friend's mom. Don't open it for them. They should go around to the front door. Everyone comes in the front door, and that's where it's safe to come in. We come in the front door. So
it's hard because you feel rude.
Right.
But I've kind of come up with a few phrases that I use, because often I'm swiping myself into a building and parents are coming up and I have to turn to them and say, oh, I'm sorry, you have to get buzzed in, I can't let you in. And it is just what Leanne said, encouraging other people and feeling confident in doing it yourself and not feeling that pressure to let somebody in with you, and just kindly, you don't have to be rude, but kindly say, I'm sorry, you have to follow the procedure and get buzzed in at the door.
And definitely for our kids too, because
Yeah.
we don't want them holding the door for anybody if they don't recognize them. You know, if they're staff, they should be able to have a swipe card and get in. And if they're not, they should be going to the front door.
Did you guys talk about that with the kids?
We did at the elementary school in Harwich today. Yeah.
Let's just say by middle school, I think it's ingrained in them, because in 10 years, I still have never been let into the building by a middle schooler going up the stairwell by my office.
I know, that's me and
I'm fumbling with my key card, and it's like, oh.
They're clearly messing with you. You're the one that said, don't you know who I am?
Every time I went to Harwich, I used to go into the office and say, "Hi, Dan," and buzz the in.
Yeah.
They said, "Who are you?"
Well, that's the other thing too, as Scott mentioned, the folks in our front offices are so amazing at recognizing families, and even if they ask you for your name, that doesn't mean they don't recognize you as a parent or caregiver. So that double check of having the voice buzzer and the camera really, it goes a lot farther than you might think, because these folks are incredible. They know every kid, they know all these faces, and they rely on that when they're buzzing people in.
Just to follow up on that, I think it's admirable, and I think we're so fortunate being in such a two small towns and small schools. But it is a lot to ask of secretaries to recognize or to say, "Oh, I'm Jacob DeVoe's mom here." But like, if I said my dad, they wouldn't know him. He's listed as a person who's safe to pick up my child. But is there a system where if you don't know the person standing there, like, what do? Do they pull up and say, "Oh, Jacob DeVoe, let me just check and see. Oh yes, that's your grandfather, you may come into the building," or do they let the person in and then take it from there?
My experience is that's where you get the follow-up question in the follow-up. Yes. I mean, I've seen people in front of me, and they'll push the button, the admin assistant in the office will say, "Hello, Miss Smith," and buzz them in. Or finally at Harwich Elementary, I finally get, "Hi, Scott," and I get buzzed in. But it used to be, it's like, "And why are you here?" It's like, "I'm the superintendent of schools," and because I think, and I think that's a good thing. But not until they're sure that you're coming in, and we also buzz people in to come into central office. But if they immediately 20 seconds later, Leah isn't Leah. It's like they haven't come up the elevator or up the stairs. It's like there's this sprint down to say, "Okay, where did they go?"
They're also checking on our student information system. If somebody's coming in, there's a list, and they pull it up very quickly to make sure that person is on the list.
That's what I wanted.
So there is a check and balance when there's somebody else, or if that person's not on the list, they will call the parent.
That's great.
And say so-and-so is here. So they do that.
Just two things I wanted to just mention. Your question about a lot to put on the people in the office. It's been my experience that when a parent or family member is coming in to drop off something that's been forgotten, to pick something up, generally they know that they're coming. And if they don't, it's, "Okay, are they expecting you? I'm here to see the nurse." "Okay, is the nurse expecting you?" "Well, no." "Okay, hold on, we'll send somebody out." They're really good about that. The other thing I wanted to talk about was the substitute question. So in the district, the last couple of years, we've had some long-term subs in both the elementary school and the middle school. When I've identified them as long-term subs, I've reached out to them and say, "Hey, I'm Bill Massey, the school resource officer. When you get a minute, I'd like to talk to you about some of the things we do for crisis planning." Both times, they've said, "Oh, I already talked to the teacher next door. They kind of got me up to speed, but I'll still go in." So there's some redundancy there that's really good, and there's a lot of collaboration. So that made me feel good that they didn't need me to open up that discussion for them. And that's been really good. So whenever I identify somebody new in the building, because a lot of the subs go from building to building. This year and last year there was a lot of new faces. And I always reached out to them and, if there's anything I can do to help you, please let me know. I'm happy to come by and show you things in your classroom that you may not have noticed already. And it's been great. So, sorry.
You got a question?
Yeah, so it stands to reason that most people who are approaching the school have a reason to be there. They're, getting a student, they're dropping something off, they're familiar with the office, what have you, but we know from incidents that have happened in other parts of the country that the people committing crimes are known to the school. So if someone were to approach the school and they might be known to that office, maybe they have an excuse to be there, and that doesn't really create a barrier between once they get in that first door and they commit whatever terrible act they intend to commit. So what, is there another level of safety for someone who really doesn't have a reason to be there? I mean, it just seems like as great as the office staff is, they can't read minds. So is there something else that can be done?
Well, I just to kind of push back on the thinking a little bit, I think if you take some of the worst tragedies that have happened recently and sit there and say, was the person might have been known to the community, but were they supposed to be, was the guy supposed to be at Uvalde Elementary School? If you walk to the front door, would they have buzzed him in? I would say no. So was he in the community? Yes, but I think he wouldn't have passed the muster of, do you have a reason for being here? And I think the sad reality on why we need to train people to be very flexible is you sadly can't protect against everything. Like, we can have threat assessments and say, okay, here are individuals that we're concerned about. What sort of supports can we put in place for them? We can have buzzer systems and cameras and school resource officers, but we also just need to be vigilant and train and be prepared. You have to try to do everything you can to have all those different layers in. I think.
I was going to follow up on the subs again. I'm guessing you probably intend to do a crisis, evacuation practice run or drill a couple of times a year, maybe 3, 4.
Right. So we'll be drilling with the so we have 4 mandated fire evacuations. One of them we can piggyback on with a have it be sort of a different type of evacuation. But we'll also be practicing this sort of run, hide, fight scenario. And again, just making sure our staff know at the end of the day, we want to make sure that people are exiting the building and that there's a place that they're going to, because at the end of this, we need to get everybody back together and reunited with you. So, that's part of the training that happens building by building, where you can kind of understand that those are the things we don't want to necessarily be publicizing. Chatham Elementary School, this is where everybody will be routing out, but those are things we want our teachers to kind of know. Here are your different options. Here's where you're going to go, and have us as principals and administrators working with public safety on, okay, now we've got everybody safely away, how do we get them all back to their parents in the most organized fashion?
Yeah, I guess the main part of the question was perhaps some practice days, maybe the subs are required to be there so that they're going through that motion.
It's a good point.
Having practice.
You mentioned the language is changing and you're not using lockdown. What is the new language?
So we would use that run, hide, fight.
Again,
let's just be very explicit. This is the scenario. This is how I want you thinking. We don't want you thinking just lockdown. We want you to think flexibly. Here are the options. And again, start in those announcements, putting out more detail as we have a situation, that is happening library, and, because the more information we can put out in real time, it can have our staff help guide their students in making safer decisions on exiting.
Run, hide, fight could be very different for a tornado outside versus an active shooter inside. So if there is more information given over the loudspeaker as to what you're doing, run, hiding, fighting, or where you're running, I guess where is really the bigger thing. Run is that first thing to do, but where to go, I guess.
And that's what happens in every building. Those are the trainings. Part of their trainings that are happening this week is every year you have new staff too, but just making sure that we're reinforcing with everybody, here are your options, here are our rally points.
And you have to understand there's like certain parts of this information we can't make publicly available. Like we can't give you all the details of the plan because quite frankly, one of you could be, going back to some of these questions, one of you could be in here with nefarious intent. So like if we give you every detail of the plan, you could take that information back and make a nefarious plan with the information that we're providing. So like all the details on where the kids are going to go in every building, in every scenario, like we have to keep certain amounts of that information as part of our safety plan internal to make sure the kids are safe, given each of the events. So like where all the kids are going to go in every specific event at every specific school is going to remain private, internal event. Like if the school committee wanted this information, it would be done in an executive session so that it wasn't part of the public record because you don't want somebody to use that information in a bad way, quite frankly. So that's why, why you're not getting some real clean answers on some of these questions. It's on purpose.
So I know this week is like focused on training. I'm just curious how often, if there's going to be planned kind of training throughout the year, especially to me as a parent, I'm worried about the front office because not that I don't trust them, not that they're not wonderful, but they're watching security cameras now, they're checking people in, they're these gatekeepers. We had talked about like the run, hide, fight coming on as a PA announcement, but presumably from the front office. But that's not their number one job. They're doing a lot of other tasks. And obviously this is very important to everyone and to them, I'm sure. But how often are they, I don't know, like, are they forgetting? Are they getting lax? Are they, are we talking about this every month with them? Not to put more pressure again on this department, on this group of people, but it's a huge responsibility.
So I'll have Jen.
I can answer that just for the
talk
high
about
school.
what it looks like.
Yeah. So just to answer your questions specifically about our admin assistants, we meet monthly. And these are things that we review on a monthly basis. And that's also an opportunity for them to talk about concerns that they might have. And this is, I hate to say it, it is something that does come up frequently based on where they sit and the responsibility that they might have in a crisis. Now that's just assuming that a crisis comes through the main entrance. And we're talking about scenarios that we're creating in our heads, but they might not play out like that, which is why I think we're trying to arm people with decision making in a crisis. And I know you asked about specific hallways. That's hard to answer because we don't know. I couldn't tell you right now if it's going to be upstairs near A267 or if it's going to be in C125. So again, I think it's not about planning around a certain incident that's going to happen in a certain location. It's more about empowering people to make a decision, a clear decision in a crisis. And that's what we're trying to train around. I hope that helps.
It does. It's just, you don't want everyone showing up to a school, whether they're a student, teacher, or administrative, thinking is today the day that's going to happen. But as a parent, you almost do.
You almost hope that.
Yeah, that everyone's prepared.
And sadly, we are talking about this more often than we used to. that's the sad reality.
Charles, did you have a question?
Given the fact that the resource officers are split between two schools, that tells me that two schools in the district are without an officer at given points in time. I'm assuming maybe 50-50 split. So my thinking is, and given what Mr. Smith said, he can't give out specific information. Is there an assurance that the plan calls for the assurance that the police department is alerted in the case there was an active shooter? What can we expect for a response time to do that? I'm assuming that there's no one else armed in the building to take down an active shooter if the resource officer isn't there. So outside response is critical to bring it. I'm thinking again what happened in Uvalde, what happened in other places.
Just a couple things. One of the things that I think if you were over at Harwich L in the morning, you're likely to see Tommy as kids are coming in. And again, it's the doors, it's that beginning of the day, the doors are open, and that's where we like to have the officers, as the doors are open when we're having people come in, have the resource officer there. When the doors are battened down, the school day has begun, the resource officer is often over at the other building as their doors are open, because the middle school and high school start a little bit later. In terms of response time, Aaron, what's the response time in Harwich?
It'd be quick, but to your point on how would we get notified, it would be just be a call from the school. Like we just did a training with the teachers. We empower them with what they need to do if there's an actual crisis like that. And I have every confidence that they'll do it. I mean, the station is, quarter mile away, and there's always people in there, but you would expect a very rapid, thorough response. And not just from us, but from the fire department and, the surrounding towns too. But yeah, we don't have somebody there 24/7, but I'm pretty confident with the staff there that they're gonna.
We do train them to never assume that someone else called 911 too.
Yeah.
Always call.
I can assure you, and we tested this by accident. My little 5-year-old neighbor was here about a week ago, and she pushed the button that's underneath my desk, and they showed up within minutes. Even though they called first and said, we have a false, they showed up anyway, because they have to.
Chief, what's the response time to Chatham?
2 minutes.
Minutes.
It was like 2 minutes.
And you're going to get a response from Chatham Police, Harwich Police, Dennis Police, State Police, everybody that's working that has a uniform on is going to hear. We share radio frequencies, we scan each other, so if we hear something that's hitting the fan in Harwich, us in Chatham, we're coming. If something's hitting the fan in Chatham, our brothers and sisters in Harwich, they scan us, they monitor us, they're coming. Trust us, you will get a response. Even the calls will get to us, and we will respond. And if it is to respond to what we train for something that we hope never happens, the response is going to be massive.
I think my question is specifically, and it has been answered, that there are multiple people that have the capability to put that call in to get a response. Because I'm a retired principal from the old days prior to all the recent incidents, where my envision was, if I'm taken down and my secretary is taken down, who?
Yes.
I'm from the old days when the principal made the call, and my question was more geared: is there an assurance that call will go in?
It's not just Jen at the high school who can say we're going in a red hot fight and announce it. It's anybody on staff can go and kick it off. In fact, the Crisis Go app is set up so that our staff can, from their phone, initiate that. So everyone has the capability of starting this response. And again, I think what the chief was saying, it's if the school says there's this serious violent event that's happening at the school, there will be officers coming from, from every nearby town to support us. And even when we had our bomb threat last year,
If I was off duty, a lot of us did, I'm not just saying, but a lot of us came in to help.
Yeah, I get a call from Jen. I live 6 doors away, and by the time I'm here, there are 10 other police cars from all over the place, and state police too.
And the state police was there too.
And I will comment, as a citizen, I have every assurance in Chatham and Harwich that the kind of response would be appropriate and not necessarily what we've seen in other communities, that the training and the capability of the people in our local departments say, here's what we got to do, and we're going to do it.
I think it's important to note that just as of recent, our officers all carry a key for the other district in their cruises. So if they do show up, any officer anywhere in our district can get into any building. They all were given keys for that, and that was what the the crisis team came up with. A great idea. Once again, they have matched the keys to each building. So I think that was important to know.
And just one other point. Long before there were best practices in run, hide, fight and crisis team meetings and all these things, the Monomoy district had already exceeded what the minimum recommendations were from emergency planning agencies. So we were ahead of ourselves, and it was good because we didn't have to play catch up with anything. The only thing we had to play catch up with was, and Rick is facing this right now, is the age of some of our buildings, having to retrofit some of the things that we've needed to do for security purposes. So as far as in practice and in practicality and in collaboration with the Harwich Police and Fire, we've been ahead of the game for a while.
And after Uvalde, just before the end of our school year, I asked our staff to sort of join me for a virtual meeting to sort of talk about the sad events, but to also ask Chief Anderson back there to share with our staff, just an assurance of how the police are trained, because unfortunately what we saw were people who could have done something, and the help didn't get into those rooms. And
The police officers in this room with you guys tonight were just as frustrated and disappointed with the response in that community as you guys were, so rest assured.
yeah, so I appreciate just him sharing with our staff, that this is how we've been training on the school side. This is how our officers in both towns have been training, that that they will go make sure that that it's addressed immediely, not wait. And and I think that's something they've been training for, and we've been on the same page all along.
Mine's not really a question. So I'm a worrywart, and I worry about my children. And there's a principal in the very back that knows me very well. So as the mothers and dads, what I will say is I cried during the hide, fight, whatever. I cried. I have 2 children in your care every single day. No pressure. And I've had the discussion with my children. I have a brother that's in the police. He has a great job. And we've had this discussion at home, and it's a scary discussion. And do I like the buzzer thing? No, I don't like the buzzer thing. I just had to use it today, and I was disappointed because all I said was, hey, it's Mom, I gotta pick up my son. And I was let in the door. And they didn't know my face. But it's okay, because I have to put my trust in the school. And I'll tell you quickly, what I learned under police at the high school and with Officer Clark is that they don't just man the school, they don't make sure that our kids are doing their homework and all of that. They know what each of these kids are doing. They, at home, on the playground, in the woods, They really know, and they're taking care of our children in a way that we as parents don't know. So as much as I don't want to trust people, because we live in Massachusetts, and I guess we're not supposed to trust people up here, but I have to, that's what I've learned. But I have to trust that when my children walk into Harwich Elementary, and when they walk into Monomoy Regional Middle School, that the administration is going to do the best they can. And my resource officers are going to take care of my children just like Officer Clark took care of my daughter. And so that's the word of encouragement that I have. It's not a question, it's just a piece of encouragement that because of the work that they did, I can say that to you, that it's scary and I cry and I worry about our kids, but I really have faith that they're working as hard as they can in the underworking of our community. So anyway, not really a question.
I would just like to say that for a brief hiatus in accounts payable, I have managed a front door of a building for probably close to 12 years. And I'm looking around this room of all the administrators that work here, and I'm having a hard time thinking of one person who doesn't have a child, a niece, a nephew, a grandchild, a stepchild, who hasn't been in this or a local district, and there isn't one of us who wouldn't lay down our lives for any one of these kids here. So.
And I will tell you, I learned that. I learned that from Principal of Police and from Clark and Dr. Carpenter. So I'm behind all of you, and I really appreciate the time that you're putting into my kids. So anyway, I won't cry.
So I just want to be cognizant of the time. So we've been here about an hour and a half. I am happy to stay and answer any individual's questions afterwards, but I also want to give you all a chance to get home to your families and your children.
That's not a question, I just want to put it out there. I didn't want to bring it up about, going in and getting the job done if duty called. That was very scary to watch that on the news. And so I appreciate you all saying it here tonight. And I want to put a special thank you out to all of you, and especially the men and women in uniform, for being willing to put your life on the line for all of our little ones. Thank you.
All right, have a great evening. As I said, I'll stick around.